we push forward in some some tough times. Obviously, a smooth sailing year wouldn't be the description of what's going on currently, but we're all hopeful and continue forward and focus on the practices that are so important to bringing really peace in communities and in society, and that's very much our focus today of this conference. So as people are coming on, welcome to the conference. And what I'd like to do is start with Justin Gamage. Dr. Gamage is speaking on behalf of our president, Mary Ann Villarreal, who is our president now at CSUDH, just to say a few supportive words, Justin, and then we'll continue from there. Justin?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So greetings, colleagues. I guess I'll start by saying good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on where you're joining us from around the world. One thing that I am grateful is that you're here at this moment, joining us in a collaborative conversation, and welcome you all to this year's cyber conference. It's the 16th annual, which means that you all have been at it a long time. So appreciate the work that you all put forth and coming together to be able to discuss dispute resolution tactics, as well as being practitioners in the world, training new generations of trained specialists in this area. So on behalf of our president, Mary Ann Villarreal, as well as our students, faculty, and staff here at Cal State Dominguez Hills, it's a pleasure to welcome you all here, but also to acknowledge the work that you've all consistently done. If there's any other time in the world right now is one of those times where your work and your expertise is very valuable. It's always valuable, but it's valuable given the moment that we are here in history. So I look forward to the keynote speakers that we have, as well as the presentations to come. Look forward to the exchange that will happen. My appreciations for creating this space. And I hope that from here, we can strengthen the models that currently exist, but also identifying emerging models that will help us move this field forward. So thank you all for having me. Look forward to the conference, and thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Gamage. Appreciate that. And now we'd like to go over to our Chief International Officer, Hamoud Salhi, who also supports the conference. He's a political scientist. His specialty is the Middle East and conflict in the Middle East. And I'd like to turn the floor just briefly over to Hamoud to say a few words. Hamoud, are you there?
I don't see him online.
Okay, thanks. And he said, well, in that case, we'll continue on over to the Southern California Mediation Association, to Mike Cantrell. Mike, I'd like to give you the floor briefly to talk about your work. Now, here's the thing. SCMA, or the Southern California Mediation Association, it really promotes the professionalization of dispute resolution, mediation, arbitration, all the practices, particularly mediation. There's a discussion in California right now, Senate Bill 940, to professionalize mediators, to create a roster, so forth, to include lawyers and non-lawyers. And SCMA is at the forefront of that work. And not only that, they have a yearly conference in the fall, and it's now national in scope. Mike, the floor is yours for a moment. You want to step in?
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I just want to clarify really quickly, Brian, we have actually had an update. We are now the statewide California Mediation Association. We have officially made the move to go statewide. We are bringing in members all across California already, so we voted to just formalize it. We are already going statewide. We might as well have a name that reflects it. So
nice.
Just to update you, yeah, we are now statewide California Mediation Association. And as you were saying, there is new updates in the law. Our organization is dedicated to not just benefiting mediators or practicing mediators in the field, it's about spreading awareness. And so to that end, when it comes to our mediators, as you were saying, SB 940 has brought about, I think it's now Business and Professions Code 6173, which is the new regulations that are going to create certification for mediators. We're lucky enough to have multiple members of SCMA on the advisory board to the state bar regarding
Excellent.
this.
That's
So we
right.
really have our finger on the pulse when it comes to what's happening with that, where we think there are needs for improvement, where there are potential issues, and we keep our members entirely up to date on all of this. In addition to that, we have amazing professional development groups that happen every single month where our members get together and can discuss, just like we are right now in a very communal environment, updates to the law, difficult cases they've had, new approaches to conflict resolution, and it helps create a sense of community within our membership. And when it comes to spreading the message of mediation, as we go statewide, we're going to be reaching out to communities all across California to let them know just how powerful alternative dispute resolution is. Because
Yeah.
there are so many people still that don't understand or know the
Yeah,
work that we
exactly.
do.
Exactly.
And if they don't know, they don't know, and they can't take advantage. So, a lot of our message is also going to revolve around spreading awareness, letting people know that there are tools and resources available for them that doesn't involve costly litigation or dragging things out. So, we really do not, we really benefit both our members and the public. And so, if anybody is interested in joining, please feel free. I'm going to go ahead and link our website into the chat so you can take a look at our organization. And again, I want to thank the Cal State Dominguez Hills and everybody else involved in putting this together. We are so thankful just to be a part of it. If anybody has any questions, I'll go ahead and link my email in the chat as well. So if you have any questions about SCMA, our mission, or how to sign up, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Now we'd like to go over to every cyber conference we do a little session, a contemplative practice, you might say, just to set the tone for the conference. And it's really creating some, ritual space really that we often don't have in our society or our daily lives. And here to join us for that and to lead us in that is Pastor Guy Witherspoon. Pastor Witherspoon's been a inner city pastor in Los Angeles for 35 years or more. He's worked on preventing gang violence. He has a church in the Philippines. He also has two other churches, but one in particular in the Philippines where he resides a little bit of the time now. He's a faculty member with NCRP, and he's a pastoral mediator using pastoral principles in his mediation. So please welcome Pastor Witherspoon. Now, this is a Christian, Guy is a Christian pastor, but if you have another tradition or a contemplative tradition, that's okay too. So Pastor Witherspoon, will you lead us in a short session? Thank you.
Yes. In my Bible, it says in Romans 12:18, if it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. In my practice, I bow my head and just say a small prayer for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you for another day. We thank you for allowing us all to be here again. Lord, I've been involved in all 16 years of this conference, and I thank you for the people who have dedicated their lives to finding peace in this world. As we see things transpire in the world, Lord God, help us to be instruments of peace. Help us to be ambassadors of the practices of mediation, arbitration, and all the things that come along with it. Mm-hmm. Lord, we ask that you would touch each and every one, that wherever they may be, that you may use them to make the world a better place. This I asked in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate that. Now we'd like to turn over to the director of the Bosserman Center for Conflict Resolution in Maryland, Brian Pokinghorn, who is a friend and colleague, and I think a mentor also over the years. Brian's also a faculty member at Salisbury University. He created the Conflict Resolution program, a very successful program at Salisbury University. He also worked on the Nova Southeastern one in Florida, among other programs. I was at an American Bar Association conference one year, and people were talking about who's the go-to who's the number one who's the mediator in the U.S. And Brian's name came up, and I always remember that. He's been in the Ukraine recently. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, he's been in the Ukraine recently, working, to help there and to, at great risk to himself, actually. He also mediates in Israel and Jordan water rights cases. He is the mediator and arbitrator named for the Woodrow Wilson Drawbridge, the largest drawbridge in the world. It's in that's near the Capitol, right, Brian?
Yeah, DC.
And then also the EEOC. He's done over the years has provided on the conflict resolution program. The EEOC reports to EEOC federally and so forth. He also is the person who really flew around the country helping TSA at the airports to improve their conflict resolution system.
Is it okay if I listen while you guys are driving?
Okay, somebody's got their mic on. Sorry, there's some crosstalk there, but okay, so
Go ahead.
All right, and Brian is one of the people in the field that has really pushed the professionalization of mediation forward in not just the US, but in other countries as well. He's working on a book reviewing all the programs globally. And so I welcome Brian Polkinghorne to our conference, and he's going to introduce our first speaker. Brian?
Thanks, Dr. Jarrett. Before I introduce somebody who you will see as very quickly as a friend, I want to ask Pastor Witherspoon real quickly, what passage in Romans was that you were when you did, was that 12 or,
12:18.
12:18. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I really like that one. So this is fun. I have the fun part. And I got to tell you, Clifton Truman Daniel is somebody I really just took to right away. I've used to working with descendants of famous people, the Kings and the Gaudis, among others. And Clifton's just like the most relaxed, friendly guy. You felt like you've known him for your entire life. And he has been quite successful in quite a few areas. And he's the oldest grandson of President Harry S. Truman and Bess Truman. So he's got first inside the family stories, first degree of separation. He can dispel the myth from the fact, and he's the son of Margaret Truman and former New York Times managing editor, his father, E. Clifton Daniel Jr. So there's a little bit of fame on both sides of the family. He's the honorary chairman of the Truman Library Institute. He's a board member of the Harry S. Truman Scholarship Foundation. He's also vice president of the Society of Presidential Descendants, which I think is kind of a cool club to be in. He's also a writer, lecturer, public interpreter of the Truman Legacy. Now, Clifton is the author of several books, one of which is called Growing Up with My Grandfather, Memoirs of Harry S. Truman. And the other is Dear Harry, Love Bess, the Bess Truman's letters to Harry Truman from 1943. Clifton's also worked as a writer and a public relations executive. He's written online memoir series, Family First Stories, and continued to contribute essays and public commentary on the Truman presidency. As you'll soon find out, Clifton is an articulate, fun guy. He says he's actually portraying his grandfather, in a one-man stage show called Give 'Em Hell, Harry, which I just think is great. And he's the first direct descendant of a U.S. president to portray that particular family member on stage. In addition, Clifton has been active in public history and reconciliation efforts, including visits to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where he's met with atomic bomb survivors and has spoken about their stories. And talk about empathetic, these folks that he's met in Japan, and Harudoki Tojo, the great-grandson of Prime Minister Tojo, and Clifton. I don't want to misspeak here, Clifton, but The way you guys get along, I would say that you're very close friends. And just recently, these two gentlemen gave a wonderful talk in our series at the center. It's called Descendants of Destiny. And so we've had like Churchill and Gandhi, and now we had Truman and Tojo. And given the fact that these their grandfather and great grandfather were on the opposite sides of World War II and were, these are our enemies. To see these two guys get along and promote peace and see the common ground and stand out and pull people in was inspiring. And I would just wish we had more guys, men and women, like Clifton, that could help us show the way. And this is how nice Clifton is. When I asked him if he would do this, he just said, sure. He said, like, talk to my people, arrange this, we got to get a he just said, sure. And I just like, that's par for the course. That's why Clifton's such a great dude. He cares about people. So I'm going to end it there and hand it over to him and let's have some fun. So Clifton, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks, Brian. That was about half my talk, so this is going to be short. And I don't have people. I have Polly, who is across the room, painting and waving her hands at you now. Thanks for that. It's nice to be with you all, even though we're all postage stamp size today. I'll start off by saying that my grandfather never spoke to me about the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It was a tough subject. I was young. He died when I was 15 years old. My grandmother, of course, lived on for another 10 years, died when I was 25. So I knew them both, but Grandpa would never talk to me about it. That said, he would not have told me anything that he would not have told any of you about his reasons for authorizing the use of those weapons. He was remarkably open in print and speaking about why he did what he did, what his influences were, what kind of advice he had gotten. He took responsibility for that decision and all others. So I grew up learning about the atomic bombs like anybody else. They were in my textbooks, my history textbooks. There wasn't much, and I don't know that there's still much today. Some of you might know better than I would on that. In my day, the history book on the atomic bombings, when you got to the end of World War II, it was a page, maybe a page and a half. It showed the ruins of Hiroshima, and there wasn't much. There wasn't anything, certainly, about what happened to the people on the ground, what happened to the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, except that you'd hear little bits and pieces and snippets about it. So I learned about it like anybody else, and I didn't learn a whole lot. Well, now, some years ago, and I want to say this was it's probably 2004, 2005, maybe longer ago than that. My son Wesley, who is now in his late 30s, he was 10 years old at the time. And I came home from work one afternoon, and I found Wesley in the living room wearing a happy coat. And he had the coffee table in the living room all decked out with sushi and green tea. And he had cushions all around the table. And we all sat down and had a Japanese dinner. It was kind of hard on our knees, the older ones of us, but the reason for this was that his teacher, Rosemary Barilla, had taught them the story of Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes in school. Now, I'm pretty sure that all of you know that story. Am I right about that? That I wouldn't have to
might want to just refresh us on that.
Okay, all right. Sadako Sasaki was 2 years old when the bomb destroyed Hiroshima. Her older brother Masahiro was 4. The family was outside. They were inside eating breakfast, and they all went outside because a B-52 was flying over. And in those days, the B-52s were a novelty to the Japanese. They hadn't dropped anything on Hiroshima. They were flying at 25 or 30,000 feet, and they all went outside to look at it. And their grandmother said, okay, stop that. You haven't finished your breakfast. Get back inside. And the minute they turned around, the bomb exploded. Little boy exploded. It flattened their house, flattened the neighborhood, terrible destruction all the way around. Masahiro and Sadako survived the bombing, but 9 years later, Sadako was diagnosed with leukemia brought on by radiation. And in order to help in her treatment, she folded more than 1,000 paper cranes. I'm sure you all know the crane is a symbol of health and life in Japan. And she folded more than 1,000. Sadly, it did not save her. She died at the age of 12. She's buried with most of those cranes. And not long after she died, her family and friends got together and put up a memorial to her and to all of the children who were killed or wounded or sickened by the bomb. And I believe it was the first memorial in what is now Hiroshima's Peace Park. That was the first story, the first personal story of Hiroshima or Nagasaki that I had ever heard. And I remember telling Wesley that it was important for him to understand his great-grandfather's point, his reasoning, important to understand his country's role, but also important to understand what that cost the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Again, Rosemary didn't just give them the book. She taught them Japanese culture, Japanese history. She took them to a Japanese restaurant, which teachers in Chicago don't do anymore. They folded paper cranes in class. So with her help, Wesley brought all of Japan into our lives. And I mentioned that to a reporter not long after that, a Japanese reporter, and nothing came of it. But somebody in Japan read that story, and about 5 more years went by, and I had another call from another reporter. And this is usually on the every 5 years this happens for another anniversary of the bombings coming up. And the reporter said that he had heard that I had read Sadako's story, and would I do an interview? And I did. And that story was apparently widely read in Japan. And I had a phone call one afternoon from that reporter, and on the line with him was Masahiro Sasaki, Sadako's older brother. And he essentially said, I think it's interesting that you and your children read my sister's story. Would you consider visiting Hiroshima someday? And I said, yes. That was it for a long time. We did not meet for quite a while after that. We finally met in 2010 at the World Trade Center Memorial. The world before they built the actual memorial. This was the World Trade Center Tribute Center. And Masahiro and his son Yuji were there to donate one of Sadako's original cranes to the center as a gesture of healing in the wake of the 9/11 attacks. And at the end of our meeting, Yuji produced a small plastic box, and he took out of it a tiny paper crane, and he dropped it into my palm. And he said, that's the last one that Sadako folded before she died. And at that point, he and his father asked me again, would I come to Hiroshima and Nagasaki? And I said, yes. It took us 2 years to put it all together. My wife and our sons, Wesley and Gates, went with us. We all went to Japan. We went to Hiroshima, Nagasaki. We visited. We went to both. We attended both memorial ceremonies. And in between, we spoke to more than 24 survivors. None of them came to us in anger or recrimination, although I'm sure that sentiment existed. But the folks who came to speak to us wanted simply to tell us their stories. And at the end of each testimony, if you will, each one of them said almost the same thing. Would you please keep telling these stories? Please keep this alive so that we don't do this again. And as Brian mentioned, I have done that over the years. That visit led to 4 or 5 years of working with an organization in New York called Hibakusha Stories. You all know Hibakusha is the Japanese word for survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Hibakusha Stories, over its 8-year period, and the main premise was to bring survivors, actual survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, to New York City, where they were based, to speak to New York school children, high schoolers most. And over the course of its 8 years doing that, I think they reached 30, 35,000 high schoolers. And the format was always the same. We would go around to different schools, sometimes at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 in a day, depending on how we got it arranged. And I would go with one of the founders of the organization, either Kathleen Sullivan or Robert Kronquist, and we would go with a survivor. And I had worked on that with Setsuko Thurlow, who I think some of you may know that Setsuko was asked to give the acceptance speech when the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons won the Nobel Prize a few years back. So I've worked with Setsuko, Shigeko Sasamori, who survived Hiroshima and was one of the Hiroshima maidens. She came to this country in the 50s for reconstructive surgery and stayed. She lived in this country for the rest of her life. She's gone now. Setsuko is a Canadian. She is still alive and well in Toronto. Reiko Yamada, all sorts of Yasuaki Yamashita from Nagasaki. So we would get up, the routine was always the same. And the first thing that either Kathleen or Robert would do was talk about the scale of destruction, potential destruction from nuclear weapons by using BBs. You know, he'd drop one on a tin plate and say that represents all the firepower from World War II. Every gun, every bullet, every bomb, every grenade, both nuclear weapons. And then he would take a massive bag full of BBs and pour it onto this tin plate, and it took about 2 minutes for them all to rattle out and bounce around, representing the power of nuclear weapons in the world today. I think, what do we have? 15 to 17,000 between the 9 countries that own them. So he would do that, and then he would introduce me, and I would tell the audience essentially what I'm telling you here, how I became involved in this. And then we would introduce the survivor. And it was a remarkably effective program, because normally high school students slouch, look at their phones, look bored. You look at them and you think, oh God, I shouldn't go on. They hate me. You know, but these kids sat bolt upright and paid rapt attention. And after almost every presentation, they all went straight to the survivor and they wanted hugs and selfies. And occasionally one would wander over to me and go, thanks. Oh, you're welcome. I'm just here. But I thought that was appropriate. That's as it should have been, because the whole point was to teach them the horror of nuclear weapons. I did that with them for 4 years, and I came to a couple of realizations recently. The first one was years ago that I'm astounded and honored, frankly, to be able to call survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki my friends. That we not only worked together, but there was time in between for eating, drinking, joking, going to museums, wandering through botanical gardens in Brooklyn. It was a remarkable. It was a lot of fun, frankly. And the other thing I realized, I've been in other countries. I've been out of this country. I've visited other nations, but I have never spent more time in any other country than in Japan. I've spent no other country. I've spent more than a month in Japan in my life. And I think the closest competitor's 10 days in another country. And the most recent trip, and Brian alluded to this, and the way I wrote this for somebody recently was I found myself in September, on a boiling hot day in September, riding a bicycle through Beppu, Japan, known for its hot springs. And I'm riding a bicycle through Beppu, and in front of me on a bicycle is Jennifer Teague, whose grandfather was Amon Goethe, the prison camp commandant from Schindler's List. Jennifer wrote a bestseller. She didn't find out who her grandfather was until she was in her mid-30s. And she wrote a bestseller titled My Grandfather Would Have Shot Me, which is perfectly true because Jennifer's half Nigerian. So I'm riding behind Jennifer. In front of Jennifer on another bicycle is Tushar Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi's great-grandson. He's also got a bandage on his leg because he wiped out the day before. In front of Tushar, leading the pack, because he's the only Japanese person in this little caravan, is Hidetoshi Tojo, Prime Minister Tojo's great-grandson. Hidetoshi is also wearing bandages because he had also wiped out the day before. So it was surreal. I am riding a bicycle behind the descendants of Aman Gota and Mahatma Gandhi and Hideki Tojo through Japan, trying to keep up with them. This whole tour was organized by a group called Hope 80, which is led by a Buddhist monk named Ryoku Endo in Kyoto. And Ryoku is also the founder of Tao Shiatsu. This is a group of his colleagues, practitioners, students from all over the world. We had Austrians, we had Canadians, of course, Japanese, Indians. It was from all over the place. And the idea was it was something similar to that Brian and I did with Hidetoshi a couple of weeks ago, the Descendants of Destiny idea, that they paired us off. Tushar was paired with Lucy Sands, Winston Churchill's great-granddaughter, when they were in England. Lucy couldn't make it to Japan with us. Unfortunately, she had a recurrence of cancer that she's been fighting. I think she's doing well, but she didn't want to make the trip. I was paired with Hidetoshi, and Jennifer was paired with Magali Brosh, who is an Israeli granddaughter of Holocaust survivors and an Israeli peace activist. So the idea was to simply be together. The most effective thing in all of this wasn't, and we said different things at different venues. We had big crowds in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 400 or 500 people. And in other small towns, we had smaller crowds. Sometimes the mayor and the city council would sit out front of City Hall while we biked in, and we would ride in our vans to within 2 or 3 kilometers of the town and then climb on our bicycles. So it looked like we'd ridden over half of Japan, but we had not. Mostly because the Gandhis and Tojos kept wiping out. So we would ride into town and we'd do a program and get on with it. And I think toward the end of that, we did the expo in Osaka. And we had all said different things, but in the end, we wound up most of us just saying, the important point here is that we're standing next to each other. We're friends. We can talk about this. Going forward, I am trying to get Hidetoshi and Ryoku to the Truman Library this fall sometime, because Hidetoshi and I talked about just doing a program together where we talked about our ancestors, my grandfather and his great-grandfather, all in the name of understanding. How did you get into this in World War II? How did it start? What kind of a person was Hideki Tojo? What kind of a person was Harry Truman? Just to do a sort of a personal stories of that. And Hidetoshi also wants to come to Missouri because apparently in the area around Fort Leonard Wood, there is a man who is a grandson or a great-grandson of one of Prime Minister Tojo's jailers. And he apparently has a piece of the rope that was used to hang Prime Minister Tojo. And Hidetoshi would very much like to see that and talk to this guy. For years, he has been sort of rehabilitating his family. It was very hard for them in the wake of World War II. They were shunned. Very hard for his grandfather and his father to find work. But Hidetoshi has sort of brought that back without turning the prime minister into a complete hero, but turning him into a human being again. And again, it was a lot of fun. You'd expect, I don't know, maybe I'm probably preaching to the choir here. Everybody expects peace activists to be very serious, very, very earnest and very serious. No, not even close. Tushar Gandhi is probably the funniest person I've ever run into, and I'm normally the joker in a crowd, as Polly will tell you. I took a back seat to Tushar Gandhi. Everybody enjoyed each other's company. We got along well. We had discussions about our ancestors, but mostly it was, where do we go from here? How do we move forward. So it's been an interesting trip. None of this was anything that I ever envisioned. Again, it all came to me, and I think that the only thing incumbent on me was, as Brian said earlier, the only thing incumbent on me was to say, "Yep, sure." I think I've run out of things to say, Brian.
Well, that's great. That's very good. I think the audience appreciates those personal anecdotes and experiences very much, actually. And yes, you are among friends here. A lot of the people here are very much supportive of restorative practices and peace building. Absolutely the case. Maybe we could turn over to the audience and have questions or comments from the audience. Anybody like to ask a question or to make a point? And please introduce yourself, and you're welcome to chime in, which is
Hey,
part of
Brian.
how we operate. Yeah.
Brian, can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, Brian. Yeah, go ahead. And then Tim. Yeah.
Right at the very end, Clifton's making a point about the seriousness of peace activists, and you don't have to be that way. And one of the turnoffs for establishment of common ground is some peace activists, because it's like so serious to them that it just doesn't leave any room for people to step on board. And when you have a disarming person like, look, this is the grandson of a guy who was in the middle of this. This isn't just world history and national history. This is family history. And they're able to get along and show some great humanity. That really is a magnifying thing. It pulls people in. And I think if more folks in our field took that perspective rather than this almost like I'm on a crusade and I need to be combative, then we'd have more people seeing what we do as something that's worthwhile. It fulfills a whole bunch of personal drives and motives. It might be have a spiritual connection, things along those lines. And I just I've been at it for 40 years, and I have friends that just they're incredibly serious. They're too serious to the point like you're a buzzkill. I mean, that's the only way to professionally put it. You're just a buzzkill, man. And then you've got people who are out there who have had the worst things happen to them, and yet they're the most forgiving and understanding. And, I'm not going to say anything too terribly bad about you. And yet they kind of show you some people can be more humane than others. So, Clifton, when I hear the way you speak and the way you interact with people, that's very welcoming. And I just want to kind of amplify that and how much I appreciate it. It's more of a statement than a question.
Thanks, Brian. And I should add that the Truman Library, undergoing a recent massive renovation, I asked them some years ago when I was working with survivors, I said, can we add that to the atomic bomb exhibit? And they did. They not only added that, but Masahiro Sasaki and Yuji Sasaki came to the Truman Library some years ago and donated one of Sadako's original cranes to the Truman Library. And it sat in its own glass display case for a while until it was worked into the atomic bomb exhibit. That exhibit now includes, it begins with the arming plug for Fat Man, the bomb that destroyed Nagasaki, and ends with Sadako's crane, 500 more cranes folded by Kansas City school children, and quotes from Sadako and the Sasaki family, as well as Wesley and I went back in 2013 and collected more than a dozen testimonies from survivors, and several of those are used in the atomic bomb exhibit, so that you can now hear survivors talking about what it was like on August 6th and August 9th. So that's included with the exhibit.
So Tim, I think, has a question, and then Anissa, just could you call out some of the folks who are trying to chime in? I can't see them all.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Anissa.
So Tim first.
Yeah, Clifton, thanks for your storytelling. I'm curious whether your grandmother, who died when you were, 10 years older than when your grandfather died, whether she ever talked about any statements he made about Nagasaki, because the two bombs have very different stories. They're not one thing. So I'm curious to know whether she talked about that with you in any way. And then the other thing I would say just very quickly is so important, these connections you're talking about, and in the way that Brian mentioned, and yet, and to be perhaps as serious as Brian wants us not to be, and we evidently have a lot more work to do with leadership, as evidenced by what's happening today. And so I think it's important to keep both of those pieces in mind. Citizen to citizen work is so important, et cetera, the humanity that we can demonstrate. And at the same time, we have the political realities that we're grappling with. And what do we do about that? And let's not let the former get in the way of the latter.
I agree, and it sometimes you don't know, and I'll go with that first, Tim. When President Obama went to Hiroshima in 2016, I'd been there in 2012 and 2013, and I thought, well, okay, he did this all on his own. Turns out he did not. I wound up talking a couple of years ago to one of, and I'm sorry, I'm going to forget the man's name. He worked in the White House, and we were on something like that. We were on a conference like this together. And I asked him, I said, we got to Japan, and then it was great that the president went 4 years later. It's nice that he thought of that. And he said he didn't think of that on his own. He was watching you. We were watching what you were doing. So you never know what kind of an effect your work has. You do what you can, and you do it to the best of your ability, and you never know where it's going to land or who it's going to affect. I don't have as much hope for changing the minds of the current administration, but it was nice that President Obama was paying attention. And no, my grandmother never talked to me about Nagasaki, but you're right, that was a different bomb. What I do know about that was that my grandfather gave the authorization. He essentially gave the weapons to the military and said release when ready, I believe was the language used. And he was surprised that they had used it on Nagasaki, had used the second bomb on Nagasaki as fast as they did. He thought that it shouldn't have been so hasty with that. And at that point, he took back control of nuclear weapons and brought it back to the White House where it is today. Because his quote was, "I don't want some dashing lieutenant colonel to be the one to decide whether one of those damn things is used or not." So, but my grandmother never spoke to us about that. And we had at the Truman Library some years ago, there's a program in the Truman Library called the White House Decision Center, in the basement of the building in Independence. Is done up like the West Wing. And school children come in and work with declassified documents from the Truman administration on several scenarios, the atomic bombings being one of them. Recognition of Israel is another, Berlin airlift is another, for example. We had a group of 6 college students from Japan from Ritsumeikan University, and we paired them with 6 students from the University of Missouri. And they did the atomic bomb scenario together. And together they came up with, yes, the first bomb should have been used, but the second one was used much too quickly. So mirroring what my grandfather thought.
Excellent. Let's go to George. George Wong, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, thank you so much. I believe there was somebody else who was before me, but maybe they put their hand down
I think he put his hand down.
Okay,
Go
great.
ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is George Koichi Wang. I'm a Peace Research Fellow at the Ikeda Center for Peace Learning and Dialogue. And Clifton, thank you so much for sharing. We do a lot of work on nuclear disarmament and education, and I was very curious about what you were saying about, talking to high school students, because we also are trying to engage middle school and high school teachers to include nuclear disarmament education in their curricula. And we're actually organizing a conference at the end of this month here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But I was curious, did you ever experience any difficulties or pushback from teachers who say this is not appropriate for students, or we don't have the resources, or anything like that?
No, we didn't. And Kathleen, Dr. Kathleen Sullivan and Robert Kronquist, Kathleen is a lifelong disarmament educator and advocate. And Robert is, he's done a lot of things in his life, but primarily a school teacher. They were the ones who set all this up. So any pushback would have been up front with them. And I don't remember any of that. This was every school that we went to welcomed us. And like I said, the kids sat up and paid attention. And they had a good format for it. That BB demonstration will scare the hell out of you. But the kids, we didn't have any pushback, and it was, to me, very effective. Like I said, I've talked to high school students before that, and
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
Oh, so Elliot, you're back up. Go for it.
Yeah, hi. I'm a student of NCRP at Dominguez Hills, and my question is about how these peacemaking techniques can be used, with our current situation. I mean, we're currently actively in a war against Iran. There's a lot of hate, not just amongst the world leaders. It's not just Netanyahu and Trump. I mean, there are people who are willing to fight in the name of Israel. There's a genocide in Gaza. How do we deal with these types of issues here at home? I mean, and also, in the United States, we have a lot of deep-seated racial issues. We're founded also another genocide, and a lot of horrors that have happened to African Americans and different groups in the United States. So how do you see peacemaking techniques being implemented in active war zones and here in this country in dealing with our own deep-seated racial and other issues?
well, Elliot, that question is a little bit above my pay grade. I only know, what I've done with the primarily over the bombings in World War II with Tojo-san and Masahiro and Yuji. And that's putting people together. I don't know if those, I don't know how well those would work in the current situation, but I think that with anything, the way to get past a division, at least one of the ways to get past a division, is to not have it, to talk to people, to hold out a hand rather than throw out a fist. I know that's easier said than done. And it is an uphill climb no matter what we do. But I think you just have to keep speaking and keep going to the protest, keep writing if you write, speaking if you speak, whatever you can do. We're all limited in what we can do, but to do whatever you can and just keep going.
That's very good. Yeah. Other comments or questions? You're welcome to chime in. This is an opportunity, particularly for
I had a question from my own living room. No.
Folks,
you better answer that one, boss.
No. Yeah, my grandmother hated that, by the way. Every time my grandfather introduced her as the boss, she's like, no, don't start that.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And then they stuck it on my mother, and here's the boss's boss. My mother actually liked that. So
Jackie Lee.
Hi, I'm a NCRP in the master's program, and I've been to Japan many times because like the Ikeda Center, I'm an SGI member, and we have an active peace movement, but there's not too many, I don't see too many peace movements or people talking about nuclear weapons. It seems to be like that was 50, 60 years ago. Do you find that more young people are aware of it now than they were, or is it less of an issue right now?
it seems, I think you're right, it seems to fade because people, they think Cold War's over. I don't know what they think. Having spent 4 years working with disarmament advocates and activists. I know good and well that they're just as dangerous as they've always been, and more so. They're bigger, badder. We've still got, I think Kathleen and Robert said there are still 2,000 or so aimed at old Cold War targets with the ready, set, fire button ready to be pushed. So the threat is still there. And then when you have world leaders saying, well, I might use one, it's so, but I mean, that kind of thing, it's such, I don't even know how to describe it. During the Cold War, even when I was a kid, very early in my life, there were the, get under your desk drills in the 60s, but that faded. So it was just background. And I remember when the Iron Curtain came down in 1989, I was shocked. Like, really? That's over? What do we do now? I mean, you've been the same, you had the same thing. It's background noise, which is terrible because that's not what it needs to be. But I think, to me, that's sort of the human capacity, the human way you can't deal with this on a daily basis. You can't drive yourself nuts from sunup to sundown every day. And you have to pick and choose your battles. But again, back to talking about it, I think you have to bring it back. You have to bring it from the background into the forefront every once in a while to remind people that it's deadly serious and that it still exists. Those students that we talk to, again, they all start off, when they first troop in, they're all like, oh, here we go, I'm going to have a lecture. But the minute Kathleen and Robert started talking, and certainly the minute Shigeko or Setsuko or Yasuaki started talking, they sat bolt upright because they'd never heard that that's what can happen.
Clifton, I think the nuclear physicists have that clock it used to be set at 4 minutes to midnight.
Yeah.
And midnight do you want us to talk a little bit about that? Because
I don't know. I haven't had any aside from an occasional note or reference to the Bureau of Atomic Scientists. It always sounds like a science fiction movie to me, the Bureau of Atomic Scientists. But you're right, that clock, and that's a good. But again, that's also background. What is it now? It's something like 5 seconds to midnight.
2 seconds, yeah.
Yes. And everybody's like, huh, look, they moved the hand.
Yeah, exactly. Other comments or questions for our speaker? Folks, it's your opportunity.
It's okay. I don't go anywhere. You could send me notes,
Brian.
I was just going to say, Clifton, one more time, how much I appreciate your flexibility and friendship and saying, sure, I'll do this. And you don't know any of these guys and what we're up to, and you're just right on with it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Gets me into more trouble.
Thank
but
you.
It's also taken me to some very good places with some very good people. So
thank you, Clifton. Really appreciate that on behalf of the group.
You're welcome. Thank you all for listening. Appreciate it.
All right. We're going to move on now, and we can keep the discussion going, but we're going to move on now to therapeutic jurisprudence as a practice. And there, we're looking at our speaker, Sophia Lucio, Sophia from Athens, Greece. And she is on the executive. Hello. Hey, Sophia. She's on the executive of the International Society for Therapeutic Jurisprudence, an active trustee. She's co-chair of the New York State Bar Association, the international section. She's also at the law firm Fuzzi and Partners law firm, and she's the head of the Italian and U.S. practice section. She also now teaches at the University of Puerto Rico as well. And here's the neat thing, and that's all great, and that would be a lot right there. But what's really neat is she worked with David Wexler. David Wexler, who's here as well in the audience, who's the founder of therapeutic jurisprudence that we now see through all the law schools. So Sophia and David are going to chat with us about therapeutic jurisprudence. Thank you. Go ahead, Sophia.
I think she might be freezing up. She's trying.
Okay. And David, do you want to say hello as well? If I'll just unmute the mic. There's mute issues.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm delighted to say hello and all of that, and to listen to Sophia, and maybe to add something along the way. But it's delightful to be here and to be part of all of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Sophia, are you able to connect on the microphone? These things sometimes happen.
She's joining in again. She's coming back in again. She should be there momentarily.
So therapeutic, in the meantime, therapeutic jurisprudence, just for everybody to know, is again, David Wexler and Bruce Winnick founded this entire way of looking at law. And now it started with judges in the legal system, but now it's gone into all kinds of different practices, restorative practices, and connects with the restorative practices in some really interesting ways. And we've seen now where people are thinking in terms of the TJ approach, they call it the TJ approach, therapeutic jurisprudence. And it's really looking at a psychological approach, looking at the therapeutic and the anti-therapeutic effects of, for example, laws or judgments or decisions or an arbitration or whatever it is on the individual involved and the community also, the effect, the consequences of those decisions. And so it looks to examine the psychological aspects, the social, psychological, maybe you might say, or the essentially there's a lot of programs use it nowadays. This idea of social and the legal interacting, and the psychological and the legal interacting to think psychologically about things. So it's contributed a great deal in this regard. Sophia, are you on board yet?
I am.
All
Can
right,
you
all right,
hear me
fine.
okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Go.
Great. Yeah.
Yes.
So apologies, I might have missed a few seconds of the introduction, but very well said. And I hope also David is still on, right?
Yes.
David, you're here. I can see you.
I'm here.
Yes, great. So David has been my professor at University of Puerto Rico, and still is currently my mentor. And we're working together on the developments of therapeutic jurisprudence. So if you agree, I will just, introduce a little bit the concept, as
Yes.
Brian has very correctly said. And then I'm very, very happy you made it to connect it today with us. So I am very well supported in this introduction. So we're going from what has been throughout this speech, peace search and peace studies and making on a bigger scale to a more personal and local scale. So therapeutic jurisprudence being an approach to the law, which, as Brian correctly said, highlights the well-being as an important component of the legal system. Therapeutic jurisprudence, for simplicity called TJ, recognizes that the law itself has an impact on people's lives and wants to use the law in a way that it produces a better effect. So what I stepped in a little bit later in the way, but what David started with and a lot of professionals have been doing before me is use therapeutic jurisprudence as a method and apply to different fields of law. So now it has become a very, very internationally widespread discipline, studied, applied, and used in different fields of law, both by attorneys in different courts around the world. So we have colleagues that are part of the International Society for Therapeutic Jurisprudence coming from different sides of us. We're meeting online involving scholars, judges, attorneys, social workers, psychologists, anyone who is interested in applying the law in a way that it can have better results. Now, talking about better results, the doubts and the questions I often get is, are we talking about applying the law in a different way than it should be applied? Like, are we talking about getting around the rule of law, or are we talking about applying the way in a different way to different kinds of people? Or are we talking about going lighter on punishments? You know, what are we talking about here? So, as Brian also introduced, we're talking about taking care of the wellness of all actors. So maybe not just the perpetrator, so looking into rehabilitating some people, but also the victim, how to treat it throughout the legal process, but also professionals involved. So as attorneys, we are very much famous for being burnt from our career. So a lot of attorneys in a very young stage usually leave the profession because they can't cope with the reality of daily lives, and they were expecting something different. They were taught at law schools. So one branch of therapeutic jurisprudence that is the way I'm going personally and being supported by David to do so is to develop the introducing of therapeutic jurisprudence in teaching in law schools, so that we can expose students in their early careers to dignity, compassion, humanity, all pillars and principles that found TJ. We want to open law students' minds and show them that there is a
Anissa, we may have some trouble with the connection,
Agreed.
the internet connection.
Right. That's her connection. Yeah, she did drop. So she may
If
be
she
joining
if she
again.
turns off her camera, that might be helpful.
Right, but I think she's already dropped. She'll probably join in just a second again.
David, did you want to step in the meantime to chat and say a word or two?
Yeah. Well, I really want to hear Sophia,
Yeah.
but yes, therapeutic jurisprudence has been for me a wonderful project and has really changed my life very much with myself and my colleague. We decided that we should really look into the law and how it works and whether we could make it better. And that's really what we've tried to do. And I think we were successful in doing that. So we had various options where we worked with the law and made it better, and had other people then joining that. And that's kind of the way it worked. I think it would be really much better for Sophia to really get into it if and when she's able to get back to that. But that's really the gist of it, is that the law itself has lots and lots to offer. And it's not just something where we go in and do something and make an article about it or this or that, but rather if we try to see what the law is involved in and how we can make the law better, how we make it better in many different ways. So that's really been it. It's a very simple process, really, if you think about it. And that's really what we've been doing, and it's been working.
Yeah, to look at the therapeutic and the anti-therapeutic effects of laws instead of taking that for granted. Like a lot of people, they don't look into that.
Yes.
Or even trained in that at all.
That's right. They're not really, but we try to make it so that they are now trained in it. We want them to know what the law is about and how it operates and how it can operate in a way that will be really helpful to people. That's the main aspect of it.
Yeah.
And it really has worked. And if Sophia is able to come back, she's going to really be able to give you great opportunities.
I appreciate that, David. Tim, do you want to?
I'm back. Thank you for picking up.
Okay.
She's back.
All right.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sophia. And then Tim, do you have, Tim had a question though too.
Well, I was just going to say, and I should let Sophia go on, but I was just going to say, it seems to me that there's maybe different realms. There's the laws themselves and how they're applied. There's how practitioners practice, how they see their relationship to the law and to society. And then there's also the structural issue within which the laws are engaged. So yeah, fascinating way to think about how we apply the legal system or improve the legal system.
Yes, absolutely. Sophia?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Exactly, that is correct. And again, there are different ways to work with TJ. So on one side, we say we can. The expression David has been using, and I like a lot, is like to pour new wine in old bottles. So in the existing legal frameworks, there are certain areas where, for example, a judge will have some extent of discretion. So when we're talking about criminal law and we're talking about probation, it can be applied in a way whereby it would motivate the person to do better because they will be praised with, for example, a shorter period of probation, or he will be prized by more benefits. So it can be applied in that way. No wine in old bottles. Yeah, that is it. So in other ways, we are also looking to develop the law and the legal frameworks in a way that in the future it is taken into consideration the way in which people are heard in front of a court, and also the way how the law is applied to them. So there are several studies that show, for example, that inner motivation is stronger than something that has been ordered for you to do. So if I decide myself that I will follow these steps to solve this problem, I am more likely to do it rather than if someone else has told me to do so. This is to say that if people are giving voice, but voice about what? In court, and they are asked, this works very well, as we have studied in TJ in different courts around the world, especially with juvenile cases, where we are facing young people that have maybe committed a light crime in their early age, and there is a lot of space for rehabilitation. Basically, if we're asking them, what do you propose you do? What do you think the problem was? Do you notice a pattern in your behavior? And they come back to the judge and they come back saying that, yes, indeed, I can see that every time I hang out, for example, with that group of people, I end up getting in trouble. So there is an extent of discretion the judges can use to follow up with those people. And if they do so, those people feel heard, they feel motivated, and they feel they are choosing the path of getting better with their lives. So we have studied that does work. And that is an easy example with criminal law, but we have applied TJ in all kinds of law. So another easy example is family law, for example, whereby globally there is a movement for taking into consideration the feelings of the parties, but especially the interest of the minors if there are children involved in a divorce. In this way, I would like to put forward the example of Singapore that has been doing great things about TJ and family law. They state openly in their court websites and in their courts that they use TJ. So they say if you go on Singapore's family courts official website, they say we use TJ. We are TJ court. We use TJ principles in our courts. So what they do is they intervene early on, even before a divorce is filed, for example, and they give the young couple the opportunity to solve their problems. So there is, which also happens here in Europe, and I forgot to mention, I'm connecting from Europe, from Athens, and it's past 11, so I'm not traveling at the best of my shape. Apologies about that, but But so here we have mediation that is compulsory before filing with court for divorce or for any other family law cases. So TJ tries to find a way to apply the law, doesn't want to go around the law, wants to apply the law, but to get better results. Can you hear me still?
Yes, it's good. You're good.
Yes.
Am I
People are
frozen
enjoying
again? I
it.
hope
Go ahead,
not.
Sophia. People are enjoying the conversation, getting lots of good comments. Yeah. You're good. Oh, did we lose you?
Yep. I think she thought she wasn't in. So she dropped. She'll probably join in again. That was actually solid.
Oh, good.
Um,
Okay.
and
So, sorry.
I just wanted to let you know that Dr. Salhi is also here.
Okay, we'll hear from thank you, from Dr. Solly in a moment, but I just want to make sure we stay on TJ for the moment. There's some issue of whether how RJ connects with TJ. A lot of restorative practitioners in the room here will be wondering how TJ can connect with the restorative practices and that intersection. And that's a big question, I think, that's currently on, which is a good question, and it's a good sign because it means that these practices are now getting shared more. As Mike Cantrell said at the beginning, we need to get the word out of the public. So now we're seeing these practices shared. That question is coming up. How does TJ interact with the RJ, restorative justice movement practices and so forth? And so, Sophia, if you're back on, maybe that would be a question to tackle there. How does RJ and TJ interconnect? Or you have a lot of supporters among the RJ people, but you also have people who are wondering from the restorative side, restorative practices side, how TJ connects.
So we do have many, yeah, thank you, Brian. And sorry again, I keep falling off. I'm not sure what's wrong with my Wi-Fi. But so we have plenty of areas where we work together. So TJ and RJ have many common grounds, such as those principles I mentioned before. What I understand from my studies and from my interest into the subject is that TJ is a wider subject. It does include RJ practices, but it also includes other things. So it does include, for example, I heard at the beginning of this conference, we had representatives of mediation associations. So we do include, for example, all the alternative dispute resolutions that, and quote what people said at the beginning of this chat. They said, you know, we're looking to solve the conflict and not to drag it in courts forever. So this is part of our principles as well. So RJ, restorative justice, you know, it's part of TJ in the sense that we're looking to restore. We're looking to, you know, try and put things back to the state they were before the damage was done, but it's not just that. So restorative persons would say in court to give voice like to the person, and in particular TJ would say to give voice about what, you know, what are we looking for. So we're looking to rehabilitate a perpetrator and offender so that as I might have said before, like recidivism is one of the biggest problems worldwide. Like in my studies in all continents, recidivism is like the biggest problem.
Yeah.
So we try to rehabilitate the person after they have spent some time in a jail, and then they get out, and within 6 months, if they don't have a house, if they don't have a job, if they don't have a network they can rely on, they're probably back in. So there's something wrong there, and that is where the law is not being effectively applied, because then this is an expensive process also for everyone, like to have persons go in and out again and going through court procedures again. It's not just for them, it's for the whole community. It really doesn't work, and you have like more perpetrators going out there, and you have more expenses for all these procedures. So there is a space where we overlap, but I think TJ comprises more. And I don't know if David, and you still hear David, sorry, keep falling off. But if I said that correctly, or if you would like to add something to that. Just unmute you, yes.
Very correctly.
Uh-huh.
Definitely. Well, yes.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, Brian, I think there are many areas where we share principles and we share procedures with RJ. but I think it's a bigger concept, TJ.
Okay, so we can understand how a judge might use, for example, TJ, in crafting a decision where you might look at the therapeutic and the anti-therapeutic effects of for example, a judge's order. How might a mediator or for example, an arbitrator or a restorative practitioner take advantage of some of the TJ ideas in their restorative practices? Any ideas on that?
Yes, so
Okay.
mediators often do TJ without calling it TJ. You know, to be honest, there are a lot of practices that are common to TJ. I see Michael nodding. You can chime in, Michael. Yeah. So mediators often, you know, do use all the principles that we have mentioned, probably without calling them TJ. The idea of having TJ as an independent subject and as an independent form and method is to have a complete set of principles, literature, biblio, structure where people can refer to when they want to go that way. So, for example, we're having this conference in October. I have mentioned to Brian of TJ, and it's going to take place at the Judges Superior Court Training Center. And basically, we're going to have a lot of mediators come in and talk as well.
That's in Argentina,
so that's
right?
going to be interesting.
It's in Argentina, right?
That's in Argentina, yeah.
It's in Argentina,
Cordoba,
which is
Argentina,
also,
yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
That's in October of this year?
In October, yeah. It'll be 27 and 28 of October, yeah. I can share the details with everyone, you know, after the conference, I can share that.
Yeah.
And basically, my co-chair for the organization of this is a mediator in Argentina, where she practices mediation basically in court, because mediation is compulsory before you go to court for both cases. And that is very interesting because basically they're trying to get things off the court, trying to solve them with mediation first.
Sophia, what if you're not a lawyer?
Yes.
What if you think, hey, hang on, this TJ is connected with lawyer. Is this a lawyer thing? Or and if I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a practitioner, I'm a serious mediator or I'm RJ practitioner. Can I come to that conference? Can I be part of the TJ thing? Can I develop these principles without being a lawyer? Or am I going to be excluded from a club of some kind? Or is it, because we're all worried about that, right? Like who's in the club, who's in the big club and who isn't? And
absolutely, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for asking. Actually, that is a very important point. And I discovered TJ as a lawyer myself, so I have spoken about it as a lawyer. But the main thing about TJ is that it is multidisciplinary. So we do work with probably most of the people that work with TJ are non-lawyers, but we're trying to train the lawyers so that they can work with TJ too. So we do work with mediators, and mediators, of course, are also non-lawyers, and also in Europe it is the same. And we work with psychologists, and we work with social workers mostly. So it is a multidisciplinary, and also the literature articles written about TJ are less of the times they are written by attorneys. And most times they're written by, for example, people working in the fields of psychology, and other social sciences. What we're trying to do is to bring it into the field of lawyers, because it does concern the law and how the law is applied, so that the lawyers are trained. So, Michael, also, I see you there, so nodding, so that, sorry, I refer to you, but correct me if I'm wrong. What we're doing here in Europe as well is all mediation associations, through their support of the bar associations, they're trying to train the lawyers to be able to support a party also during a mediation, because if the lawyer is not supporting there, and there are certain procedures where the parties need to be assisted by lawyers, there are certain others where they can go to the mediator independently without a lawyer, but there are certain procedures where they need to be assisted. Each party has to have their own lawyer, but if the lawyers are not trained with the principles of mediation, for example, they will obstruct the path, and they will not facilitate the resolution of the problem through mediation for different reasons that have to do with, we go back to training lawyers from the beginning, because some lawyers, especially here in Greece, I've had this a lot, like lawyers regard mediation as a smaller source of income in comparison to long court hearings. So we have to train the lawyers and say, hey, look, you know, at the end of the day, you're going to feel better about it. The party is going to feel better about it. When this mediation is closed, you're going to have another one. So, you know, you might as well just get the same amount of income from that and not just, you know, have everyone stressed out throughout years of court hearings. And in the end of the day, like have the party penniless at the end of all this procedure, whereby they will not refer to you again, probably. So we're trying to train the lawyers here to also be able to assist parties through a mediation procedure. So I was curious also to know if that is the case elsewhere. Probably it is.
Mike, do you want to jump in? You have a response to?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. Sophia, wonderful talk. I just wanted to touch on you hit the nail on the head. Mediators, we use transformative justice and restorative justice. We may not just call it that. So there's so many different approaches and ways that mediators can resolve conflict, and a lot of them do use the tenets of restorative or transformative justice in getting there. And I just wanted to make a quick comment. One of the main and most important aspects of mediation is what you touched on, is giving the parties a voice. Because yeah, the parties can go to a judge and have some authority figure decide their dispute for them. But oftentimes that doesn't get them what they want. And so they need to engage. When they engage with the mediation process and they have a mediator listening to them, hearing their concerns and understanding what it is that they're hoping to get out of it, it allows for a lot more latitude and a lot more ability for the mediator to craft solutions that actually work towards the party's needs. Not just, you know, what they say they want, but actually what they need. And you know, there's so many different ways that mediators, can accomplish that through, again, through the tenets of restorative and transformative justice. And when it comes to California, there is a push towards incorporating more mediation into our court systems. There was a law passed called the Dispute Resolution Programs Act, which has given a lot of communities in California money to develop their own alternative dispute resolution programs, because judges are, I'm sure this is also nationwide, but at least in California, judges are backlogged. They're tired of having hundreds to thousands of cases on their docket. And so the work that mediators do to help alleviate that not only benefits the parties themselves, because the parties have an opportunity to craft a settlement or a solution that works for them as an individual, not just what the law says. And it's a difficult thing when it comes to attorneys. There has been a greater push from, again, the court side because of the backlog of cases that they've had, and that's slowly creating a culture shift. But there is, you mentioned this, and I think there will always be attorneys that work like this, but as the culture changes, there should be fewer and fewer of attorneys that look to, fighting it in court and, fighting tooth and nail, ripping your opponent apart and never giving an inch. I think that type of mentality is slowly starting to change. And I think it's in no small part thanks to the work that all of us do, including you and all the rest of the Dominguez Hills education programs, in changing people's perspectives on this. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but I'm just happy to see some changes happen. And I hope that those changes continue.
I think it's a very good thing that you're seeing the interaction of, restorative practices, therapeutic jurisprudence, mediation, and other approaches now, including indigenous practices, and we have some indigenous practitioners on board with us today. They might want to speak about this too, but there's these connections are all coming together. And I think that's a really healthy sign, actually. You're seeing the emergence of professionalism, and not just professionalism to exclude, like guilds that exclude, but instead they're becoming practices that people are recognizing are needed. And so TJ then plays a role now, not just inside the court, but actually can have a role in terms of theoretical and practical kinds of considerations, thinking psychologically inside some of these practices like mediation and so forth, arbitration and the like. Sophia, back to you. And then
So
Carol.
I have become, yeah, just one last note maybe from me. Just I have become famous in the law firm. It's a big law firm for Athens, and every time, you know, I have a case and it comes through me, and you know, they know she's the therapeutic one, you know, she's the one that goes through mediation, and you know, I'm gonna be the one that proposes to the client, you know, maybe we should try and go that way first, you know, and then, you know, if it really doesn't work, then we go to court. But you know, I can see a lot of space there whereby, you know, you could find a solution with the help of a very good mediator. And of course, it has to be a very good mediator on that specific subject, because we get different kinds of cases at the office. So I think that before getting to know all the principles of TJ and before getting so involved with it, I wasn't like this as an attorney. So it has opened up a whole new level of the profession for me, and that is why I was so passionate to work with David in introducing this into law schools at an early stage. So
very good.
The development of a professional identity.
Yeah.
If I can just touch up on that.
Sophia, we have a few
Yeah,
questions
have a couple
and
of minutes
comments.
more.
Maybe, yeah, could we go to the comments and questions though, Sophia?
Okay,
just
sorry.
and then come back to Denny.
Sure.
So Carolyn, to start, Carolyn.
I also see that Tim Hicks has been, I think, waiting ahead of me, so I don't want to jump in front.
It's okay. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay. This is really, really compelling, and I love everything that you're saying. It's clear that the sort of impact of self-determination certainly is something that we see in the practice of mediation. I know from the work that I do, I work as a coach in the family law realm, so supporting people in as a partner in their process in family law in terms of the divorce process, separation, parenting plans, and so I know that those concepts sure matter in a mediation setting. They also certainly would matter in a litigated setting where your attorney understands these kinds of ideas and how they support you. As a person coming from the side where I'm often the support to the client, what I also know is that a party going into mediation or a litigated situation without the understanding, the support to think about how to use their voice that you're commenting on, how to come in with clarity, emotional management, all of the preparation that will allow them to sort of show up as best they can in that process, can make or break their sort of success, for lack of a better word, or their ability to move through that process and in a way that they can feel good about where they come out at the end. And so I hear you saying that you work to bring these ideas to attorneys and to mediators about how best to support parties. What can you offer about how we, as those supporting the parties, can support them in thinking about how to take advantage of these ideas in what they look for in their mediators or attorneys, what they ask for in those spaces such as courtroom or mediation room, and to sort of integrate this into what they're looking for as the client, in terms of this as an opportunity to, as you say, elevate an experience that could otherwise be a fight.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you. That's great. And also what you do is crucial and is very important. And I have to be honest, here in our countries of Southern Europe, we have very few of those people like you supporting the parties throughout these processes, while it would have been, it would make everyone's job much easier if they did have a coach like the role you described throughout a divorce procedure, for example. So there are a few interesting things that I have come across while studying therapeutic jurisprudence with relevance to what you were asking. So one key person in our community I say our community, but not like, Brian, not to say the club that where everyone else is excluded for. Everyone is welcome to join. It's called the ISTJ, International Society for Therapeutic Jurisprudence. It is open, it is online, everyone can join. So we have a person who is based in London and Paris, and she's a professor, Martine Evans. And she has written a lot about self-determination. And she has made actual studies upon the parties that have, in fact, made their own decisions. So she started. It was I still remember I read a piece by her, and I just wanted to share this with you as an example about what we were saying. I can say.
Oh, we have crosstalk, Sophia. Sorry.
Professor Johnson has the mic on.
Yeah, can we just mute the mics there for a second so Sophia can be heard?
Yeah.
And we're close
Thanks.
to time actually as well. So
okay. I'll cut it short. So talking about self-determination, she was studying the people taking part to the Olympic Games in very young ages. So certain people, they were training very hard to take part to the Olympic Games, and they were deciding by themselves to take part to these Olympic Games, and some other, they were somehow compelled by whatever reason, external motivation. So the ones that were more successful, of course, they came up to be the ones that were choosing their path to take part to the Olympic Games. So she took that as an example, and she developed that within the legal context of self-determination. But I can share with you the details. That was a very brief introduction, and sorry for taking up everyone else's time. I don't know if we have time. There are two more questions. I can see there, Tim and Karen. We don't hear you, Brian.
Thank you. We have two more questions, and then we'll go to our next talk. So in the interest of completeness, Tim and then Karen, and then we'll go to Gerson's talk.
I'll be very brief. I just wanted to mention collaborative law as a practice. I don't know how many of you are aware of that. Yeah. And two is for 8 or 9 years, I was the first director of the graduate program in conflict resolution at the University of Oregon that was housed in the law school. And so that was great because we had many of my students were joint degree, JD, and masters in conflict resolution. Those graduates who went through my program practice law very differently than they might have otherwise. And I think it's a good model, whether as far as a degree program, creating a whole degree program or not, but just introducing into the legal curriculum some of the material that we all are familiar with, and Sophia, that you were referring to. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, this is exactly the idea. Yeah.
Karen?
Thank you. It's been a long time since I worked in mediation. I took the courses and the masters with Dr. Marco Turk, and I just kind of pulled it in as a practice for myself working in special ed in a public school setting. So I've worked in systems. I recently worked in vocation within the justice system with the concept of, in the state of California, they've changed the interactions and communication skills within the prisons using the term California model. And it seemed to me that it echoed an awful lot of what I'd heard in other systems called trauma-informed communication. And I wanted to ask you, how do you actually see the work that you're doing now impacting systems where there are not humane practices in place at this time, and people are aware of it, and there's very minimal change within the system, but a lot of talk around it? How do you see yourself being able to impact or not? I mean, thank you. Is that clear?
Thank you, Karen. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I don't know if also I wanted to leave some space to David if you wanted to jump into this question or after, or should I go ahead?
Go ahead, Sophia, and then to David.
Yeah. So when I said before that we have two ways of working with TJ, the one is working with the existing models, so with existing law and using the extent of discretion or of should I call it gray zone in a good way on how to apply certain laws with the sake of having best effects. The other way then is the lobbying, so the working towards developing legal system towards better practices. How does that happen? There are different ways we can impact systems. For example, there is a framework for excellence of courts worldwide. Also, I will share once we close, I will share the link with everyone. It is a system whereby the courts can evaluate how they respond to all these principles that we all share here today. So dignity, humanity, compassion, and then we can take these best practices and bring them elsewhere. And finally, another system I would like to mention is that these values are often used in special courts, so mental health courts, drug courts, family courts, minor courts. And now the push is to mainstream TJ, so to bring these best practices that have been developed in special courts, but to bring them and apply them in main courts, in all kinds of courts. So it is as law development, as law movement, and it is difficult because we're working with different jurisdictions and different laws existing, different frameworks in different parts of the world. But there is interest internationally, and there is a push internationally to go this way. So I am very honored and proud to be part of this.
We have David. Did you want to just chime in briefly, and then we have Hiwat very quickly. But David, did you want to say anything also?
Well, I think this has been a great program, and I think Sophia's doing a great job. And having just turned 85, I kind of think it's nice for her to be taking this over. And I will be helping along the way all the time. But she's done a great job, and I don't really have that much to say about what's been said here. I think it's been great, and we're anxious to continue with all of this.
Yeah, thank you, David, for all of the work over the years you've put into to bring TJ to the fore, and we're really seeing it now. It's just fantastic. So we owe you a debt of gratitude. Just want to recognize your work, and also Sophia, thank you very much. This has been really good to learn more about TJ. Yeah,
thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
So we should go to the next set.
You want to say something briefly before we move to the next talk?
Yes, I'm a student at Dominguez, taking sociology. I remember Sophia was saying that mediator in social work. How does that work? I'm interested.
In social work, for example, applying it in social work.
In social work.
Briefly. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, just quickly, Sophia, and then we have to move on.
So as I said, my co-chair for organizing the conference in Argentina for TJ is as a mediator and a social worker. So she has the dual qualification. So she would be the best person you would meet, and she could explain everything to you. But applying TJ in social work is exactly how you can go next to the person. Usually my colleague works with minors, for example,
Yeah.
And when she supports these minors as a social worker, taking part to a procedure such as mediation or such as a court hearing, she is supporting them with the principles of dignity and humanity and voice in a way that they can express themselves in the right way. And as Caroline said also earlier, the other colleague that came up and asked me a question like a minute ago, she says, how can we as a coach make sure that the parties are taught how well to express their feelings, to use their voice? This is exactly also what TJ wants to push social workers to do, to make sure that social workers can support these parties that need social workers support to be able to be present, to express their voice, to exercise their rights, and to obtain better results. So this is very quick, so apologies if it's not very clear, but feel free to drop me an email after this and we can reconnect.
Thank you, Sophia. Sophia from Athens, Greece. And now we move from Athens, Greece, all the way down to Sao Paulo, Brazil, to Jay Gerson, Damiani. He likes to go by Jay. He's the director of the Global Institute for Peace at the University of Sao Paulo. He's a renowned filmmaker. He makes films, and he's made a film on the Caxinan, I'm going to try to say this right, Jay.
Yeah.
Indigenous people basically in the Amazon, and has worked with indigenous tribes and takes this work seriously and has really done some good things on the film side of things, as well as his work at the Global Institute for Peace, where he's developing and working with international arbitration and looking at, in particular, looking at peace engineering as an approach to dispute resolution. Peace engineering is a field, and Jay brings together all the engineers, social scientists, mediators, dispute resolution practitioners, and he brings them together in conferences. And Jay puts on some of the best conferences in Sao Paulo and elsewhere. Really fantastic. I've been there myself. Really appreciate the work that Jay is doing for the field. But he today is going to talk about peace engineering in particular and developments in peace engineering. Jay, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Brian, all friends and colleagues that are here today. It's a great pleasure every year to be able to participate in this very exciting initiative that Brian has been doing for so many years. And every year you see that it's been developing in interest and collaborating with California State University. Dominguez Hills has been very fruitful, and hopefully we'll be able to continue cooperating in the future. I have prepared a presentation with PowerPoint very briefly just to address the topic. Let's see if I can share it. If I cannot, then I'll just talk about it. But if I can share, I will do that so for the next 5 minutes just to situate the topic, because maybe peace engineering for some of you is not very familiar. So let me try this here. So we are here at the Global Institute for Peace at the University of São Paulo. We are located at the School of Engineering, and I'll address some of that a little bit later. So today I'll be talking about dispute boards, mostly dispute boards, but from the perspective of peace engineering and dispute resolution. So just as a very quick summary, what is peace engineering? I define it as an emerging field of interdisciplinary education and research focused on conflict prevention and conflict resolution, whilst using existing and novel technology to build a sustainable, peaceful future. So I'll also talk a little bit about the creation of a hub for peace engineering at the University of São Paulo using ESG criteria, environmental, social, and governance criteria, and the model initiative that we have here, the Conflict Resolution Center, with a triple helix model. So we were created in 2016 as a lab to support research and extension activities at the University of São Paulo on conflict prevention and revolution, taking the contemporary needs of an all-inclusive society. And we developed a hub for peace engineering during this time, observing the ESG criteria in compliance with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. My original area of study, as Brian mentioned, I come from international law. My original area of study are ADRs, alternative dispute resolution, mostly international arbitration. But today we are working with dispute boards, and I'll go into that too. So when I started my studying, I was working very hard on the CISG, the UNCITRAL, the United Nations Commission for Trade Law, established in the 1980s, and the New York Convention, which really are the pillars for international commercial arbitration. Nowadays, I am also focused on dispute boards. Dispute boards are conflict prevention boards that follow the projects and initiatives from the onset. So it's not a conflict resolution mechanism, it's a conflict prevention mechanism. Using the triple helix model, what do I mean by triple helix? Here we're talking about university collaborating with governments and the industry, the private sector, the public sector, and the universities, how those three pillars can collaborate to build a more sustainable future. So the criteria here that are fundamental for us, that our focus is on environmental observance and social inclusion through sustainable governance. So when we think about peace engineering, we have human beings and the environment in the forefront. As Brian mentioned previously, we have done some cooperation with California State University Dominguez Hills and University of Alaska. I see that Paul is there too, with some indigenous populations in Brazil. And we have done film festivals also with Mexico. Last year, we did that with France, was the year of France in Brazil and Brazil in France. So this collaboration has been ongoing. So since we live in a sustainability age, the evolution through the centuries, sustainability is fully incorporated into our current economy. I call it the green era, having ESG as a case study. And this brings to us a lot of challenges and opportunities. So here are some of the initiatives that we currently have on dispute boards, which I will go into detail right now. And here's also, I will put that in the chat. This is our contact in case you need our contact. So I'll stop sharing right now so that I can focus more on the examples of what we're talking today, because the field is so vast, and if you have questions afterwards, we can address these questions. But I would like to talk a little bit today to you about dispute boards. Why did we come to dispute boards? I think that we have mentioned here before, mediation and international arbitration, they come to ground mostly when a conflict has been established. And a dispute board is a rather novel mechanism for conflict prevention, an ADR mechanism that's been implemented mostly on large infrastructure projects. So here we're talking about projects that have the financing of the World Bank, of large institutions that want to assure that you don't even arrive at the conflict level. So what does that mean? At the onset of an initiative, of a large project, you already define a board composed of people from different specialty areas. And this dispute board will be following the project even before a contract is signed throughout the whole initiative, all the way up to delivery, and even a few years later. So traditionally, this has been used, for instance, for building subway lines, tunnels, bridges. The Eisenhower Bridge in New York is in the United States is a very famous case for dispute boards. But here we are also, as a novelty, we're not only bringing the aspect. Let me backtrack a little bit. When you build a dispute board, I was telling you that it's multidisciplinary. So ideally, we don't have only lawyers involved with it, as has become the case with international arbitration. International arbitration wasn't supposed to be like that, you know? It just evolved into being like almost all-inclusive lawyer mechanism. And dispute boards, what do we want in dispute boards? We want, obviously, someone who is familiar with the law, but we also want an engineer and we want an accountant. This is a very traditional dispute board. So people from the onset, they're observing the finances, the technical aspect of the initiative, and also the legal aspect of the initiative. And if you foresee some type of possible conflict arising, you kill it from the onset. You just go there and you negotiate, say, okay, there's going to be a delay in payment, or there's a contractual issue, or there's a technical issue that cannot be solved as we had originally planned. So what is the novelty here? I was very happy to see the therapeutic jurisprudence speech being conducted with us just before my talk by Sophia, because we want to bring the social aspect to these boards too. And that's why I mentioned the 2 case studies that we have here that we have been developing. A lot of the case studies, a lot of the dispute boards we do are under confidentiality agreement, so we can't discuss all of them, but these 2, we have the permission to do so. One is a municipality in the state of Minas Gerais, about 4 hours from São Paulo, where they have the highest springs of natural water in Brazil. So a lot of the water that we receive in the large cities like Rio and São Paulo, and here we're talking about conglomerates of 50 million people altogether that receive water from these regions. By the time this water reaches some of the first municipalities, or even like the large cities, this water has been completely polluted, contaminated. So we are starting a large infrastructure project from the onset and keep the water clean all the way through. So this is a very large infrastructure project of water decontamination and sewage implementation being financed by the federal government of Brazil. And we proposed a dispute board for this. What does the dispute board do? So as I mentioned previously, we have the traditionally 3 pillars of finances, law, and engineering, but we're adding further elements of social responsibility. So we have like people who are social workers. We just had a question about that before, to discuss with the population why is that work being done, just to make sure that you avoid social unrest. Another example of a project that we have is for mining regions with some international mining corporations that are in areas where we have had in the past 10 years very large catastrophic events of landsliding and the death of people, contamination of water. So what we're doing now, we don't have to arrive at that level of conflict resolution once an arbitration has been on set. We want to come much earlier. We want to come through education with the local populations, but also with conflict prevention with specialists. What are we using these days to technologically help us implement that? Originally, you would think that an institute of this magnitude would be hosted at the law school. And we went to the School of Engineering on purpose because when we think about peace engineering, we think about implementing technology. So one of the technologies that we are implementing in these 2 projects that I mentioned are technologies related to digital twins. I don't know who is familiar with what digital twins are. Digital twins are...
talk about it, yeah.
Yeah, digital twins are a mock digital simulation of a large infrastructure project. So for instance, if you are building a underwater tunnel, you would have that project reciprocated, a mock project at a digital level where you can do all types of testing and experimentations digitally that already helps you predict, catastrophe events, unforeseen events through excessive rainfall or soil erosion, But also what we're doing, we're using past experience on contracts, jurisprudence to simulate legal problems that could arise out of the project through digital twins. And that applies to all areas of the project. So whilst the project is developing in real life, we have already tested it digitally. So this is the digital twin technology applied to large environmental initiatives or infrastructure projects. This has been quite very challenging. I would like to recognize also two people who I've seen are here today who are doing studies with us. Brian, one of them recommended by you, Scott Martin, who also came from California, who I believe is in California right now, but came to Brazil and is returning to Brazil now in May. And he's bringing that psychological aspect of the conflict prevention.
Scott is on. Scott is at the conference here right now.
Yeah, and then we also have Professor Ileana Rodriguez from the Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico.
Oh, right.
And who is the former director of the law school at the Tec de Monterrey, who's doing a sabbatical here with us to help bring this ADR model, an ADR lab. We started as a lab, and then we became a full-fledged institute in 2022. So we're like 10 years old. And now with Ileana, we're working on possibilities of a knowledge transfer to Mexico as well. So this international cooperation is very important for us. Nice. I rest here now, and I'm more than pleased to take questions and comments from the audience.
So comments and questions for Jay. And by the way, Jay, maybe I've got one quickly. What about DSD, dispute systems design? That's a growing field. We're seeing it everywhere. It's looking to design systems to prevent and also deal with disputes in advance of the dispute. It sounds like that you're connecting very much to that set of principles, DSD principles, dispute systems design, as we call it. Any thoughts about that connection you want to talk about?
Yes. It would be interesting to mention our last international forum. Every couple of years, we do an international forum on topics involving peace engineering in general. Yeah. And we were fortunate enough to have Brian speak for us during the last forum. And I think that when you think about a design right now, you're not thinking about that very traditional way of dispute resolution, that you just sit three people who don't know about the subject matter, and instead of that, when we do a dispute system design, you already focus on who are the elements who are relevant to that conflict prevention, to the prevention of future possible conflicts. So when we talk about having the environment and human being at the forefront, for International Women's Day, for instance, we had a conference on women in peace engineering. What are the contributions to gender equilibrium, to gender inclusion, to social economic inclusion, to therapeutical inclusion, to psychological, sociological inclusion. So, and all that, obviously, since we are the School of Engineering, aligned with technology. How can technology work in our favor to prevent conflicts instead of the other way around?
And do you I guess you see using AI with this as well. There's going to be a role for AI in all of this, I guess. Wow, it's amazing. Comments or questions? We have two. We have George and then Hewat. George?
I think Hewat had their hand up before me. I'll let them speak.
Okay, Hewat and then George. Go ahead.
Well, my question is, when you say international forum, is that every ethnicity, or is it varies to local ethnicity?
Yeah.
Well, this forum we do on site at the University of São Paulo, but we have a roadshow that goes, roadshow, we call it the roadshow, that has three pillars. We have a cultural pillar that comes with film festivals or workshops where populations and communities can participate worldwide. So for instance, we had that in Mexico, in France, and throughout Brazil. We're at the climate conference in Belém in the Amazon in November, and we're planning to come to California November this year. So the large forum, I mean, for organizational purposes, for logistic purposes, we organize in a hybrid manner at the University of São Paulo. So it's on site and also online, but we have smaller versions that we take around the world as a roadshow, as I mentioned previously.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay.
And George?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a quick question about how if you've ever experienced like opposition or kind of, objections to including like having a dispute board in large infrastructural projects, because they might be worried that the prevention is not actually that effective, or conflicts that come up from engaging members of the community, trying to educate them is only going to slow down the project or bring up problems that don't really need to be discussed. Any stuff like that? Or if you have like findings that show that it's actually more beneficial for the community or more beneficial for the stakeholders to involve dispute boards proactively.
That's a very good question. We have two avenues that we could pursue here. There's one avenue that the financiers, they require a dispute board. So that's the case of projects financed by the World Bank. They won't finance any projects that do not have a dispute board. The KfW of Germany and very many other financing institutions worldwide. We have metrics, we have studies. This is the advantage of being a university. We research about it. It's not a profit motive that we have. It's research and data that we collect for metrics. So we have been able to calculate for larger infrastructure projects a savings of up to 30% on the project for the avoidance of conflict. First, because the projects, these large infrastructure projects, don't stop because of the conflict. They don't go to court, they don't go to an arbitration chamber. Just like as you save time, you save money, and also the conflict prevention for foreseeable engineering, infrastructure, or social difficulties that may arise. Some areas now, George, we have globally, we have some areas like the city of São Paulo today, the city of São Paulo with about 20 million people, it has a local law, like a county law that requires projects, infrastructure projects after a certain amount of financing to have a dispute board implemented. But that's not applicable everywhere in the world. But in the US, it happens the same way. There are some areas that require a dispute board for projects of a certain magnitude.
Thank you, Jay.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Comments or questions for our speaker?
I have loved them. One thing that it might be interesting to pinpoint is that this is a field that is growing, really growing a lot. If dispute boards start being implemented, communities start realizing that they're participating in the decision making of what's going to affect them in the future. It's growing a lot. And for international arbitration, this is normally, I'm an international arbitrator myself, and I've been doing this for 30 years or so, and I teach it as well. But what you have observed with international arbitration is that it's not as flexible and it's become a market, it's become a protected market of people recommending other colleagues that they know to become part of arbitral panels. And in dispute resolution today, we're working really hard for it to remain as it is, but it's a lot more democratic because you have people from different fields, you have people from different areas of expertise. So it is growing exponentially as opportunities, opportunities for people who want to come to the field.
And creativity. Yes, exactly, Jay. Very well said. All right. Well, if we don't have any further questions or comments, we're going to move to our next talk. Before we do that, I just want to allow Professor Salhi, who is actually our Chief International Officer, basically equivalent of an international dean at other schools, to come on and say a word or two. He's a political scientist and also a expert in conflict, Middle Eastern conflict. Hamoud, are you there? You want to just say a word or two?
I like all what you said. You should continue. Expert on the Middle East conflict is a bit tough today.
Yeah.
But let me first of all, thank you for all the work you have been doing. And I'm speaking as someone, as you mentioned, who knows the program very well. Before, as you know, before you got there, I was at one point leading the program and structure. And I know the value of the program. What you did is extending it and expanding it so it is closely linked to student success. And we have a lot of results out of that, the success of your student all over. The reputation of the program that is now very established on our campus. And I can tell you that the provost and the vice president and the president himself are grateful for the opportunity to organize this conference and the longevity of this conference. One of the things that I have benefited, or the program has been benefit, is your ability to connect people. And the Zoom medium or information technology in general really helped you a lot, Brian. These conferences have been expanding, and you give us a chance to actually value the work that international institutions, people who are expert in this field. And as a clear example, you brought Ambassador Steve to the program.
Ambassador Steve Rhodes, he's here now.
I've seen him, and what did Ambassador Rhodes do is that connect you and I on the current project, on the project that we have currently working in Ethiopia.
Yes.
A project that brings ambassadors, former ambassador, policymakers, highly or very well-known people from Indigenous government. Without your connection and without Ambassador Steve Rhodes, I don't think the university would have benefited from this.
And we also have Ambassador Edelman on this call as well.
Ambassador Ken Adelman is present, and he's going to speak in a few minutes.
Let me just say there that I did get your book, Ken, and I'm reading it. So, and thank you for a good read. So that's another example, a clear example of the work that you do,
thanks,
Brian.
Thank you.
In terms of the benefit that we get from this kind of conferences, are not just in generating perspective, hearing perspectives, learning about other programs in dispute resolution and negotiation and mediation, but more than anything else, translate them into real ideas, improving our curriculum, and the fact that you have several professors who are attending this program is another indication of the seriousness that the campus has taken your work. And I can't thank you enough for all the work you do. And I have always been looking forward to this program. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Hamoud. And that's, you've always been a big supporter, and it's just really, really very good to have. We're very much appreciated, Hamoud.
Thank you.
And for such a long period, you've always been there. Thank you. Our thoughts go now to Musa Ghaziani and his son, Mohammed Ghaziani. They're in Tehran, Iran right now. They're in the situation with the bombing and all that. They wanted to come on before the war started. They were ready to go. We were talking back and forth, and they're international scholars. They're sad in a way because they're peace scholars. They're not political. They're human rights scholars. They're international arbitration scholars. And Musa does great work in advancing arbitration at the international level for humanitarian purposes, also for sustainable development, for developing energy projects. And his son is also doing that on the commercial side, looking to find ways that we can improve investment for sustainable and energy projects that benefit everybody. So it's very sad right now. And our thoughts go, obviously everybody's thoughts here go to Musa and his son and his family. And we hope they're okay. So, but we have a fortunate thing though. Ken Adelman, U.S. Ambassador Ken Adelman, with our support of Ambassador Steve Rhodes, have agreed to speak in their place. And I should tell you that Ken Adelman is the person who was in Reykjavik, Iceland, with Ronald Reagan, who Ken basically was instrumental with Ronald Reagan basically negotiating the end to the Cold War. We were talking earlier about the 4 minutes to midnight and the nuclear clock and that whole era. That was a scary time, I can tell you, because I was there, and we were very, very worried about the real threat of nuclear war at that point. Ken was instrumental in the negotiations between United States government and Soviet Union that brought an end to the Cold War with Gorbachev. And he has a book, Reagan in Reykjavik. He also has a movie coming out in a few months to speak about all this. And Ken, I want to give you the floor to say a few words. And again, thank you for stepping in, as you are doing. Go ahead, Ken. Thank you. Folks.
Very good. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
And thanks to Ambassador Steve Rhodes and Hamoud for getting me in the act here. I've known Steve Rhodes for a long time, and he has really been wonderful, both in the classroom and in practical terms out in embassies as ambassador. I was very lucky to be involved in the Reykjavik Summit of October 1986, before some of you were born, not Steve Rhodes, but others. And when you mentioned, Brian, that a movie is coming out, I just heard today that the movie starring Jeff Daniels and J.K. Simmons and Jared Harris is going to be released in September. It's going to be in 1,000 screens across the United States.
Wow.
It's they went from the name Reykjavik because most people can't spell it. They spell it W-R-E-C-K, A-V-I-C-K or something like that. They call it At the Brink, or Turn at the Brink, or something at the brink. And it's going to be auctioned off to these theaters on Monday afternoon. And it should be very good. It has a first-rate cast with Jeff Daniels and J.K. Simmons and all that. It has a character called Ken Adelman, which I'm proud to say is a kind of a handsome guy. I don't know what his lines are. I guess I care a little less about what his lines are than if he's really good looking. I wanted Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks or some other Tom to play me, but what we got is a guy who's he seems very good to me. So what we had at Reykjavik was real, what we're talking about today, conflict resolution. And these two, Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, were together for this one weekend, actually 2 days, Saturday, October 11th, 1986, and Sunday, October 12th, 1986. And they spent 10 and a half hours debating the main issues. As Hamoud, who is in the process of reading the book now, Reagan at Reykjavik, knows pretty well, that 10 and a half hours. Now, you spend 10 and a half hours talking to somebody over 2 days. That's a long time. And they come to a real agreement on nuclear weapons. And that showed up the next year when there was a treaty between Reagan and Gorbachev signed on December 8th, 1987. That was the only arms control agreement in history to eliminate an entire class of nuclear weapons, the intermediate range nuclear weapons. And I would just end by saying that throughout his life, Mikhail Gorbachev was asked many times, especially when he toured the United States and he toured the West. The question always was, when you came in office, the Cold War was at its worst. It was the coldest. It had been in a very long time, since 1945, maybe. And when you left, it had really warmed up and you were on the path to ending the Cold War. What brought that about? And his answer was always the same. His answer was Reykjavik. What happened in Reykjavik really changed the whole course of history. And I was, as Brian said, I was very, very glad to be given a front row seat and to help a little bit. But the real effort was between Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev. Thank you, Brian, for the time.
Oh, I appreciate it very much. You were actually in the room.
Brad, let me interrupt for a second.
Oh, Ambassador Rhodes. Yeah.
Ambassador Edelman is being very humble here, but he was the principal staffer for that meeting and prepared the briefing papers for President Reagan. So
wow.
We really have a gentleman who is a piece of history on this call.
And our main job was after Reagan and Gorbachev finished on that Saturday, October 11th, the experts met both on the Soviet side and the American side, starting at 8 o'clock at night. We took a break at 3:15 in the morning. We concluded at 6:20 in the morning. And at 8 o'clock in the morning, in a very secure location, I told President Reagan, I said, Mr. President, we accomplished more yesterday than we have in 7 years of constant negotiations in Geneva. And it really was thrilling to be there.
Yeah. And the rest of us owe the fact we didn't have any wars to all of this.
That's a little bit of an overstatement there, Brian.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Ken.
Right
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. Yeah.
Well, thank you for
Brian,
inviting me.
I want to go over to Brian Pokinghorn. Hopefully, Ken, you'll have a chance to meet Brian at some point. He's in Maryland on the East Coast. Brian, you had a point, and then over to Jackie. Brian?
No, I was just wagging my head listening to this, and I was old enough. I was 23 when that happened, and my ears and eyes were glued to Reykjavik. So I'm hearing you saying this. I remember that. That's all. I wouldn't want to say anything. I was just going along with it.
You just wanted to get on here to say you were alive then. Is that right?
Well, I love to say I wasn't,
This is cool.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Jackie.
Yeah, I put it in the chat. My question was, what was the prime point that allowed these talks to be reconciled, the conflict in those 10 hours? was it something specific, or how did that come about in the 10 hours of discussion?
Yeah, Jackie, that's a very, very good question. I think above all, when you stand back, now we're standing back, what is it, 40 years or more? Uh, what was it? It was that both Mikhail Gorbachev, especially Mikhail Gorbachev, and Ronald Reagan had decided that the nuclear issue was getting totally out of hand. They both wanted to really change that situation. Ronald Reagan came into office, and one of the first things he did was to take what President Carter had been negotiating, which he called it the SALT negotiations, Strategic Arms Limitations talks, and Reagan changed it immediately to START, Strategic Arms Reduction talks. He wanted to really reduce nuclear weapons and not control the growth of nuclear weapons. So one thing is, both of them came into that, Jackie, with a desire to really do something on the nuclear issue. And secondly, and I think it was awfully important, and I could see it in Reykjavik, they got a dialogue between the two. They got a sense of trust between the two. They got a bit of understanding between the two that just was not there before. And what was amazing was in those 10 and a half hours that the foreign minister, Edward Shevardnadze of the Soviet Union, and the Secretary of State, George Shultz of the United States, almost said nothing. And the two of them, of Reagan and Gorbachev, were really talking to each other in a way that, was different from they had ever done before, or I would submit than a Soviet leader and an American leader had ever done before. The Geneva summit a year before that was a normal, I would consider it a normal superpower summit where each of them would use their talking points developed by the staff to talk to the other side. And it was very stilted. It was very, regulated. It was, you never got a feel for the person. And Mikhail Gorbachev, as I said, throughout his life, said what really changed was Reykjavik because we really did understand each other for the first time.
And you also said that at that meeting, President Reagan, in his talks with Gorbachev, had no notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a little bit of overstatement, but he had practically no notes. And what he did was really tell his views. And Gorbachev really told his views. And when you look at the transcript afterwards, which I've done to write this book, Reagan at Reykjavik, you realize both of them were at times speaking against the official policy of their government, because they didn't believe it. And so it was, I love to say, it was a pure form of the two men. You got a chance at Reykjavik to peek through the keyhole there and to see them as they really were, and not as, this program stiff, actually just laid out on, by the staff kind of person performing what the two sides, each side want to be performed. You saw them at their real self. And they appreciated that.
Ken, we have a question or comment from Clifton Truman Daniel, who is presenting today also.
Hi, Ambassador. Thank you both, for both ambassadors for this. It's really nice to see men like you, people like you have done so much in this arena.
Before you go on, are you related to the Truman relative?
Yeah, that's the only reason I'm here, Ambassador.
Okay. And how are you related?
I got nothing else.
How are you related?
He was my grandfather.
He was. Okay.
He was.
That's what I thought.
I wanted to make the comment that, first of all, thank you both for this, for everything that you've done. I was on Peaceboat, Japanese nonprofit that makes 3 circumnavigational voyages of the globe and does various work. And we stopped in Reykjavik and treated, and I think isn't it called Norway House?
No, Hofty House.
Hofty House, but it's Norwegian construction, if I
That's
remember
right, and it was thought to be haunted. And it was even thought to be haunted at the time.
Okay.
With ghosts coming around.
But I have to tell you, and you may know this already, but it was treated as a pilgrimage by the people on Peaceboat because we were there for the same reason. And we made, we just all trooped over to Hofty House. And of course, saw the table where Gorbachev and President Reagan spent 10.5 hours. And I always thought that Iceland is a wonderful place because it's the most peaceful country on the planet, if I'm correct, which I think is remarkable for a group of people who used to be, Vikings.
Yeah.
And
they have no guns in the country. Police don't have guns. The army doesn't have guns. Well, there's no army.
No spears, no
and
shields,
no one has guns.
Helmets.
No one has guns.
And of course, there's my favorite picture was on the wall of Hofty House is just a picture of the Icelandic landscape with so effing peaceful.
Yeah.
Across it, although they spell it out. The Icelanders know how to spell. But anyway, thank you. Thank you.
That was your favorite picture on the wall. It wasn't the picture of the American delegation late on Sunday afternoon.
Were they there? Anyway, thank you both for being here. I appreciate it.
That island is on a volcanic fault.
Sure.
And I was told that they actually can export energy, and they cool down water that comes up from the faults.
All right.
Yeah.
But let me just say, Clifton, that I was thinking a lot about your grandfather because I was out at Fulton, Missouri last month giving a speech about the Reykjavik Summit on the 80th anniversary of Winston Churchill's speech in Fulton, Missouri, declaring an Iron Curtain coming down across Europe. And your grandfather took the train with Winston Churchill and was the reason Winston Churchill went to Fulton, Missouri, and gave the speech. So I saw lots of pictures of your grandfather and Winston Churchill there and was honored to tell everybody because Churchill's speech was really the onset of the Cold War. And what I was saying, maintaining that Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev at Reykjavik was really starting the sunset of the Cold War.
Yeah. And of course, what I remember from that trip was that Grandpa told General Harry Vaughan, to make sure there was plenty of brandy.
That's right.
Winston, and don't take too much money from him at poker, which turned out to be not a problem because Sir Winston fooled them all. He knew exactly what he was doing, and I believe he fleeced everybody on the damn train.
Okay, good.
Wow. Let's throw open the floor now to questions or comments generally from anybody who hasn't spoken yet, who would like to say a word or two. You're welcome to do that at this point. Come on in, and anybody like to speak? Just raise your hand.
Brian?
Yeah, Brian Polkinghorn. Yeah.
I just thought what Clifton just said a moment ago, it's interesting that we're seeing 2 guys here on the screen who represent the beginning and the end of the Cold War. And I love the humor, Clifton. That's you. That's a great way to remember things. And Ambassador, your front row seat to this whole thing. It's one of these. It's a good reason why we should be going to the cyber conference because these things happen all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, Brian. I see your hand raised there. Did you want to chime in and say a word?
I just want to say thank you for both, Ambassador. I'm from Ethiopia. And if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be here trying to accomplish my degree. I thank you.
Well, thank you. And when you talk about seats of power, Ambassador Edelman can tell you about his seat in the bubble in Reykjavik. He was one of the more junior people in the room.
Okay.
You wanted to say a word or two?
The full story is told.
Tell the story.
The full story is told in the book Reagan at Reykjavik, but I'll give you a quick, very quick summary. After the first morning in Reykjavik, we were told to go into the secure bubble, which is a room within a room in every embassy around the world with thick walls and circulation so that it cannot be penetrated. Our bubble in Geneva had a conference table, and there could be 25 of us sitting around the bubble. In Reykjavik, because nothing much ever happened and none of it was ever secure, it had 4 very small folding chairs on one side, 4 very small folding chairs on the other side. And George Shultz said that the rest of us should be in the bubble, and he was going to tell us what happened on the first morning of Reykjavik. We got in there. They shut the big vault to shut the door, and we took our seats in these little seats. And all of a sudden, the vault opens up, and there's a big swoosh. The air goes out, and the Secret Service says, "The President of the United States." And with that, Ronald Reagan starts to walk in. He's a big man. There's a very little space. The 8 of us are belly to belly and shoulder to shoulder in this little space. And I thought to myself, if I am going to stay in the bubble, and I thought to myself, I am going to stay in the bubble, that I better do something quick. So the something quick is I said, "Here, Mr. President," and take my seat. He kind of aimed so he could hit the chair, and I immediately hit the floor, and for the next 40 minutes was gently leaning against the presidential knees as Reagan gave his impression of the morning there. It was one of the great memories I had of Reykjavik, probably the greatest memory I had of Reykjavik. But Steve, thank you for mentioning it. All you can read about it at greater length in Reagan at Reykjavik, the book. And even if you don't want to read the book, at least buy the book.
And all this is free of charge, okay?
Well, the book isn't, though, Steve.
Okay, right.
Pastor Guy Witherspoon. Guy,
Yes, I just wanted to thank each and every one for being here once again. And peace starts with each of us. And I'm just so glad to see this continuing. And my prayer is that we will all be instruments of peace in this world with everything that's going on. And I commend each of you for whatever area you're working in to keep trying, keep pursuing peace at all costs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate that. And then Michael with SCMA organization? Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to touch on what Mr. Witherspoon mentioned. And I just wanted to say, I think it's wonderful. The speakers that you've brought on, these ambassadors are wonderful. Clifton, amazing. Sophia, also incredible. Gerson was great. I just wanted to thank all of you for that. But I also wanted to say, with these big conversations about world leaders and nuclear disarmament, it's also important to remind yourself that peace building happens on a local and individual level too.
Yes.
You can't, just because you're not in the room with Gorbachev and Reagan while this is happening, doesn't mean that you can't do good and build peace amongst your neighborhood, amongst your friends. These, the things that you learn about conflict resolution are applicable just as well to your family and friends as they are to global leaders. And so I think it's important to remind ourselves that we are building peace just because we're not in the same room as, world leaders doesn't mean we're not building peace.
Right. Exactly right. Exactly right. It can be done at all levels. It's fantastic point, Mike. Over to Scott from Mediators Beyond Borders. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to reflect back what this experience has been like today and really commend you, Brian. When we talk about diversity, we get stuck on race and religion. And what you've done today is diversity of thought and really expanded the field of what conflict resolution or conflict transformation can look like. And so what we heard from Day really pushed that envelope. And it's a conversation I'm so excited to be having here today and then continuing to have with all of you moving forward. So thank you very much for this space, Brian.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. And all of your work that you do around the globe is fantastic. Over to you, Hewat. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to pin back to Michael. When you say making peace all over or surround you, you can't really make peace. It's so much going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the gang bang, it all depends where you live.
Yeah.
It all depends how much money you make. So to those people that's low income, to those people is poor, there is not enough peace. How can you talk about peace?
Yeah.
It's not enough peace.
Yeah.
Police brutality. When we speak police brutality, it's like they target African American and the Browns, the Mexicans, and that constantly consisted of happening. How can you make peace?
Yeah. So we have Dr. Renee Castro, who wants to, maybe he's got a statement or two about that. Renee is from Latin community, Mexican American. Renee?
Well, I mean, she raises a very challenging question, actually, but I just wanted to say, because I know we're nearing the end, is just, as a faculty member on behalf of the NCRP program, I just want to thank our presenters and our attendees for joining us today. I also want to thank our very own current and former students. We just met Martin a bit ago, and he's a regular in our conference, and Hewat and Elliot and others who joined us today. This conference is always engaging and inspirational, and to Hewat's question, the issues we face as peace builders locally, nationally, and internationally are challenging and complex. And one of the things I appreciate about this conference is that it always serves as a reminder of the collective capacity and power we share in creating positive social change at every level. And so I just want to thank everybody again for joining us today and continuing to make our cyber conference a success.
Thanks, Renee. And over to you, Pastor Witherspoon.
Okay, now I got it unmuted. When you talk about poor communities and everything, I have been a practitioner in Compton, Los Angeles, South Central, and things of that nature. And going back to mediation practices, you have to help people find common ground. And when you help them find common ground, there is the possibility of peace. We've seen it throughout my 35, 40 years as a practitioner. We've seen it in neighborhoods where gangs were infested. We've seen it in gang prevention, gang intervention. I worked with Chip Murray when he was alive. We've seen peace come about in poor neighborhoods because we always look for that common ground. One of the first mediation cases we had was working with the police in Mar Vista, California, up here outside of Culver City, and they were having 3 or 4 killings per week. And we were able to reduce that number by finding common grounds between the people that live there and the police department and helping them to understand that peace is only possible when people participate. So you've got to find common grounds for people to participate. It works.
Mm-hmm. Hewat, you want to respond to that briefly?
Yes.
Thank you, Thank you, Pastor.
There is no common ground where the police is acting like crazy there is like perpetrator police workers working in the police office, and they just go crazy because they are police officers and they do whatever they needs to do and use their powers to exercise and do whatever.
Mm-hmm. Pastor, you want to respond to that briefly?
Yeah, let me
Hold
speak to
on.
that.
We have someone here today who can
Oh,
address
right.
this.
Thank you.
Renita Valerie.
Renita Valerie, yeah.
Thank you,
who
Renita.
worked with local communities in the sheriff's department, and she is a living example of how
Very
you
good.
can create peace and develop relationships with people on opposite sides of an issue. And here she is.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ambassador. Renita?
Hello, everyone. In response to the question, your ability to create peace starts with the individuals. If they're willing to be open to look at possibilities of what is different and what is needed. As a practitioner, we go into those spaces where there is the perception that nothing will change, there will never be any peace, and that's not true. It depends upon the community members, what it is they expect, what they want, what their needs are. We take a more systems thinking approach and looking at the issue in a very broad respect. Change will never take place if law enforcement and if the community members aren't willing to sit down and talk about it honestly. It may be very uncomfortable having those conversations, but when they can be forthright and say what they need to get those emotions out of the way and look at the problem very systemically, peace can happen. It's one person at a time, it's one community at a time, but it is possible. As long as a community member takes the position that nothing will ever change, it won't change.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a level of openness.
Right. And your work, you've worked with the mayor of Compton, you've worked with the Antelope Police Department, you've worked with an LA County, within LA County and elsewhere, doing this work between police departments and community members, and done fantastic work, Renata. So it's really, you're speaking of what you know.
Yes.
So thank you. Yeah. All right, folks. I think we've enjoyed another good conference here, and people can talk by email, and we can provide email addresses to keep the connections going. Thank you very much. Until we meet again, until next year, all the best, and stay safe, and take care of yourself. All the best. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Brian. Brian, stay on line for a second, would you?
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.